Welcome to the Get Real Podcast, your high-octane boost of full-on reality therapy for personal, business, and investing success with your host, Ron Phillips, because somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Get Real Podcast. Ron Phillips here, and I've got a special show for you today. As you know, I don't have guests on too often, but man, this is like 2 in a row plus 3. Man, it's been several in a row here. This is going to be a great show as well because I have my friend Annie Yatch on with me, and she's a leadership coach, and she's worked with my team, and we had a great time. What we're going to talk about today is actually, it's like right in her wheelhouse. It is so pertinent to, I think, anyone. So you listening, this is pertinent to you in whatever aspect of your life you may need help with this particular thing. I've actually sent you a couple of other people who are now raving fans. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I love working with you, and I loved your team, and everybody you sent to me. I just love helping. It's the biggest honor to get to change people's lives this way.
Yeah, it's that is so much fun. I mean, I love doing it on the financial side. And I think people don't realize how much the topic we're going to talk about today infects all aspect of life, financial, relationship, spiritual, like pretty much everything. And I'm going to stop teasing everybody. We're going to talk about how to get rid of the personal saboteurs in your mind. And a lot of times, Annie, people don't even realize that it's happening, like that there is a saboteur, that it is sabotaging their success in whatever part of their life. Walk us through, well, first off, let's do a better job of introducing you. Tell us a little bit about what you do as a leadership coach, and the aspects that you work with people on, who you work with. Tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you do it, and then we'll jump into the topic and start moving that way.
Well, I didn't start out as a leadership coach. I started out in counterterrorism, and I was all hell-bent on protecting the country, making the world a safer place, doing the best that I could because I went to Georgetown for my undergrad. But honestly, when I started getting into the world of, the spy world, it was just a little too much because I can't lie. And I really just want to make people feel a lot better about their world instead of putting people into fear. And so the big transition for me was after I met a Navy SEAL, I started hanging out with a lot of the SEAL guys, and I started realizing that the way that these gentlemen think about the world is so unique. And I was like, what if we could bottle that? And we could take it and give it as a mental edge to all the people I ever met who are entrepreneurs, because that would allow us to do things that were next to impossible, at least in my mind. And that's really what all the elite warriors do. And so after I started studying the SEALs for a little bit, I started backwards engineering some of those mindsets, those systems, those processes, and I started bringing those into the entrepreneurial space for the teams, executive teams, 3M, a lot of different companies. But what I started realizing, Ron, was that if, as a leader of your company, you don't address the underlying patterns of your subconscious, that those patterns are going to run you and they're going to run your business. And so you're going to fall into some very limiting belief patterns, some negative thought patterns, merely because you have a 7-year-old who's running the show. And so it was my goal to make sure everyone's 7-year-old is in a good, happy place so that there are no limiting patterns, no sabotage happening in the business, so that everyone can impact the community better, make more money, have a better experience of life.
Okay, so that sounds great.
Yeah. And
so, how do we find the saboteurs? Like, how do we unearth these, and then how do we fix them? So let's move that way. In my logical brain, I'm like, okay, great. Let's say I have one, because I'm not sure yet that I do, but let's say I do.
Okay.
How do we find it?
So typically what you're going to discover as you go through the process is that unearthing the saboteur has a lot to do with the patterns that keep happening over and over in your life. And these are patterns that are not necessarily positive. And so what I always ask people to do is I'm like, okay, spend a couple of minutes writing down on a piece of paper, where are the areas of your life where you're suffering? Because if you can identify the areas of your life where you are suffering, you can
Hmm.
also identify where your subconscious is trying to lie to you. It's trying to give you a lie that you think might be true that you're going to lean into. And the subconscious runs at 11 million data points a second, and the conscious mind only runs at 40. So there's a lot in those 11 million data points that your subconscious can do to run you and take over. So that's the first thing. You have to really look at what are these suffering moments or suffering situations. And I tend to have people look at the different teams in their life because it makes it very clear. Is your family team suffering? Is the couple or relationship team suffering? Is the business team suffering? And then it helps you be a little bit more clear on what some of the patterns might be in those teams.
So I was just having a conversation the other day.
Okay.
We were trying to understand why it is that, and this I'm pointing out one thing, so don't hate mail me here, people. But one of the things that comes up in topic of discussion sometimes is why do battered women go back to another man that abuses them? Why
Yeah.
does that? It seems like that's what you're saying. Like there's
Yes.
something wrong in the relationship piece, and it keeps happening over and over. Then you got to figure out like what is making that thing happen. I was literally just talking. That's why it's fresh in my mind. I was literally just talking about this like a couple days ago with a friend, and we were just like awestruck at why it is that this happens. And of course, we have our own. It's pretty easy to see somebody else's, but I'm like, this is so clearly messed up. Why do you keep going back and doing this over and over and over again? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like
Yep.
that's an
Exactly what I'm talking
extreme
about.
version maybe of what you're talking about?
Well, it's honestly not that extreme, right? But the whole concept is the environment changes for someone. So they might get out of a bad situation, but because their subconscious has been programmed and conditioned by that bad situation for so many years, that's what makes them feel comfortable. And even though they're miserable, they also have a comfort and a safety level that their subconscious is trying to keep them in. So the hardest thing for me is watching battered women go back to their abuser is the fact that there was a comfort in their subconscious of being in that abused state because they had the quote unquote survival tools or survival mechanisms, at least in their own mind, dialed in to at least help them survive it. They weren't going to thrive in that scenario, but their subconscious was trying to keep them safe and keep them in that survival. And honestly, the easiest way to describe it is typically I use this example of cavemen, cavewomen. So for people listening, if you were a caveman or a cavewoman back in the day, and you decided one day to walk down to the stream and you sat on a rock that was a black and orange rock, and all of a sudden that black and orange rock became a tiger and it attacked you, the very first thing that would happen after you got somewhere to be safe is you would start to replay in your mind over and over again, fuzzy orange and black things are going to harm me or kill me. I need to be much more vigilant. So now you're in your cave trying to stay safe, tending your wounds. You go to sleep that night, your brain over and over again says, fuzzy orange and black things are going to kill me. You wake up the next morning, you look outside of your cave, and all of a sudden, every single bush outside of your cave might have a fuzzy orange and black tiger behind it. So before this occurred, you never once thought about tigers because you didn't even know tigers existed. But now, everywhere you turn could be a possible tiger. Now, this is how the subconscious brain works. So for these women, everywhere they turn, there's potentially that tiger, that abuser. And they know if I'm in that situation with the abuser, I at least have some skill sets to work through it. But when you put a woman then in a totally different environment with a man that loves them and dotes on them and cares for them, it's going to feel very unnatural, very uncomfortable. They're not going to know what to do. Just like if that cave person decided, okay, I can go out today, I can try to hunt, I can try to be the best hunter I can be. They're going to be hyper vigilant. So they'll be one of the best hunters ever. But the second next door, the hunt or the tiger killing tribe moves in and they're wearing all the different pelts that are orange and black, that person is going to be terrified of those very safe people because they wear the same colors as the tiger. And in your subconscious mind, you don't know the difference between something that happened to you years ago and something that's happening to you in the moment. Although we'd like to think consciously we do. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so it makes total sense. It makes total messed up sense. Yes. So how do you see this in leaders, and how do you see this in people just trying to? Not even leaders, but if somebody's listening to the show and they're like, "Man, I've been wanting to do X, Y, Z for years. I've just never done it. Like I can't figure out how to move to
Through
get
that.
this other thing done." Like I think there's a lot of ways this shows up in our lives, and some of it is like super simple. Like, why can't I go and start this other career that I want to do? Why can't I go invest in real estate? Why can't I lead my team effectively? Whatever it is.
Well, I think a lot of it in business or as leaders shows up when we're having a really tough time taking action to take us to the next level. So what I see it as specifically is when entrepreneurs hit a certain level of revenue and they can't get through that revenue barrier. A lot of people say, well, it's your systems, it's your processes, it's your people, right? And many times it could be all three of those things. But what I find is the one biggest lever that you can pull as an entrepreneur is you can figure out what is the limiting belief or the saboteur that's been blocking you that is directly linked to something that happened in your childhood. And because we don't have the ability to assess those 11 million data points on our own, the only way you would see it is if you had help. And so for me, I used to go into businesses and I'd be like, okay, let's change the behavior of your team. Let's add some systems and processes. Let's define the roles and responsibilities. And that was great until the leader or the head entrepreneur would jump back into micromanage when the team was doing great. And then we got bigger problems because that little 7-year-old didn't feel like he was needed enough. And so he had to jump back in. And
Mm.
so I see across the board, whenever there are entrepreneurs that have either hit a revenue barrier and they can't get through it, and they're wondering, how do I get to that next level? It's almost always linked to that subconscious pattern that they can't see. And
Yeah.
then that pattern, and you do a little bit of work with the team, then really the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, I worked through this with salespeople for years because, if you have a salesperson, you can have two people who are equally skilled
Yes.
and they have the same leads. Everything's the same. One of them makes $80,000 and the other one makes $300,000. And while there is most assuredly a work balance difference, right? One of them is almost always outworking the other one. There's another piece of this, and that is there is a definite comfort ceiling that people hit, where they don't feel like they're worth more than that, or they don't feel like they can make more than that, and they hit that ceiling, and they'll literally stop working. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. But with salespeople, this is so easy, and it's a phenomenon in the sales world that is very well known, right? That you hit this unnatural ceiling you set for yourself, and as soon as they accidentally sell past that number, they're like, "Oh, okay, I can actually make this amount," and then that's their floor now, and so they've completely reset, and that's the only way they can get. But for a long time, they keep bumping their head at 80 or 120 or whatever the number is. They can't get past it. And the craziest thing is you can watch them as a leader. You can watch them sabotage their success.
Over and over.
It's almost on purpose. You're like, yeah, dude, you literally went on vacation for 3 weeks because you hit what you thought you were going to hit in the month in the first week. So you stopped working. Literally, you stopped working for 3 weeks because you had a great week that made your month. It's nuts because you're thinking, why don't you just do that for 3 more weeks and quadruple your money?
Well, Ron, you would lose your mind at some of the things that I see, like people who play out the same cycle where they'll build a company to 5 to 10 million, completely sabotage it just so they can rebuild again because the excitement of the rebuild is more, it's more of an enticement to their subconscious than it is to maintain. I mean, I can't even tell you the number of men and women who I've worked with who were on, like, I think the last one, this person was on par to make $12 million, completely sabotaged, dropped all the way back down to 6 and was like, well, now what? And I was like, well, the time to talk is really before you hit that slump, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, right? We are entrepreneurs because we've had some sort of a childhood experience that has made us want to control the chaos and to solve all the problems. And so we don't like it when it's calm and it's smooth and it's easy and everything's consistent and we're stabilizing a business. We like it when there are these ups and downs and, we're all over the place. And so that was really for me when I watched so many entrepreneurs go through that. I'm like, we got to change this up. We got to do this differently.
Do you find, because I definitely relate to that. I don't know about you guys listening, but I can definitely relate to that. Some of the people are like, you guys are psychotic. I mean, some of the people listening are like, these entrepreneurs are psychotic. And it's not untrue. It's not untrue. There's a little psychosis for sure. I found one of the things that helped me with that is to be able to create new things in the business that propel it, because I like the challenge of creating something new. I do. But also, I went through those cycles exactly like you're saying, where I was literally sabotaging the business, like it hit and then come down, hit and then come down. And I couldn't get past it. And one of the things is that if you've got something that's working and then you can go do something else that brings value to the table, but you're creating something new and you get to feed that piece of you that needs the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't use any of the people in this other side that everything's going fine. Go get somebody else to help you with your chaos over here so that you don't bleed the chaos into the company.
Correct.
That's helped me anyway.
And that seems like common sense, Ron, but it isn't. Like what Ron just said, everybody, is so dialed in. I just want to repeat it. If you're going to do something in addition to what you're currently doing in your stable business, do not use the main team from that business to build that other thing, because it will create way too much chaos and you'll sabotage yourself. So that was brilliant. That was so great to share.
It happens like once a month, Annie, where there's something brilliant that comes out. I didn't plan it to come out on the show, but
I'm just glad it happened here.
You're a witness. You're a witness that it happened. And now, if I'm like every other salesperson, I will be done for the month. Brilliance already happened. Well, it's happening at the end of the month.
So this, Ron. You need to keep working on the brilliance, right?
It's technically it's the 23rd. I get to take a full week off now, Annie, and I don't have to do anything now because the brilliance happened, and everybody, you guys witnessed it right here. Okay, so let's talk about. So that's great.
We solve it.
Yeah. What do we do about it? And it may not be what we just talked about. It may be something entirely different. So if you're listening and you're like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, this doesn't even pertain to me. Well, that's not true.
I can give an example of something
please. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So one of the things I see in a lot of the men and women that I've coached is there are relationship issues that come out from your 7-year-old, right? So an example, I had one gentleman, he was told by his parents when he was very little to go into his room, and they locked him in his room and they wouldn't let him out for an hour because of his behavior. I think he was 5. And he decided in that moment as a little kid that everybody had died. And so he had decided in the irrational mind of that little boy that he would not be in connection with anybody. He would have to do everything on his own from that moment forward. Now that gentleman went on and built all these beautiful businesses, but then he couldn't build a relationship because he felt that the person that he might try to be in a relationship was going to die. And we spent a lot of time working through, well, how do you rewire this thing that's been in you for 45 years that's keeping you from the relationship that you most want? Literally, he would spin through person after person, dates after dates, and could never make that connection. And so it's not necessarily that it's just a business thing. When it hits you in your personal life or it hits you in your business life, those are patterns that are definitely linked, but some people it's more strenuous in the relationship side than it is in the business side. So that's an example. It's a little bit different.
Or finances or spiritual or like whatever it is, right? You listening have something. So figuring out what that is, it's literally the difference between success and failure. I mean, to make it that black and white, it's literally that. Okay, so go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with you on the sales side because I've worked with so many sales and acquisition reps to get them out of their own way. But a lot of them don't see the pattern because they've never had anybody do that work with them. So I think that you were dead on there too, talking about how the sales cycle would completely change if people were more aware.
I mean, everybody knows it's easier to see the rod in somebody else's eye, or the rod. Yeah, the plank. The plank. I mean, it's super easy to see something small that's keeping somebody else stuck. It's almost impossible to see the big,
It's
huge
impossible
thing
to sit
that
there.
like everybody else sees that is keeping you stuck.
Correct.
And that's why masterminds are so important. Coaches are so important. People who, mentors, anybody who you have around you who can actually see the thing, is comfortable enough pointing out the thing, and then has maybe been through the thing and can help you get through it as well. It's super important. Super
I
important.
100%.
Okay, so we've
How do we,
identified it. What do we do?
okay, so this is going to sound a little bit different, but I've heard so often there's so many things out there about us having imposter syndrome in our lives. And I
Mm.
bring this up because imposter syndrome and sabotaging yourself are very closely linked. And if you research it, all you can really find out there in the world is you should have gratitude, you should talk to a therapist or talk to a coach, you should really try to focus on all the positive things in your life. But for a lot of us, that just seems very vague, right? So, what I've found is there are a couple of key things that you can do, whether you have this imposter syndrome or you are sabotaging yourself, that completely changes the game. So, is it okay if I share a couple of those just because if people are listening, this could be a game changer?
Absolutely, please.
Right. Okay. So, the first thing, and this is something that everyone talked about for a while, but most people don't practice, there's a conversation and a relationship for you to build with that little kid that is within you. So, a lot of times you'll hear people reference inner child practices. What I've noticed is the stronger the relationship is with your little kid, the more powerful you can act in the world. And so I've had a lot of entrepreneurs come to me, especially men, probably from the age of 35 to 45, 50, who have been told their whole lives that they're not supposed to have emotions, they're not supposed to be emotional. But what men don't know is that the extra 10% of power that they're able to access comes from accessing their emotional state and being able to magnetize more towards them. And so, where I start a lot of the men that I coach with is on, okay, have you talked to that little kid? Who is that little kid? What does he want? What does he need? What does he enjoy? What does he want from you? And so, almost every morning, if you're a man or a woman listening, if you can talk to that little kid version of you, what I have all the clients do that I work with is I have them take a picture of themselves when they were between the ages of 4 and 7. I have them put that picture on their mirror in the morning so that when they're brushing their teeth, they're talking to that little kid. They're asking, well, what do you need from me today? What would make you feel more loved? What do you want to do today? Because if that little kid isn't happy, that little kid is the one sabotaging you subconsciously.
Okay, so that sounds. I'm just gonna be straight
Sounds
from a man
familiar,
here.
right? Yeah.
That sounds super touchy feely and really silly.
Yeah, that's what almost every single person says until they do it consistently. And I've watched people go from making 20K a month to making 150K a month. I've watched men go from running a business that's 2 million to going to 10 million. I've watched people build partnerships with people in completely different ways to launch and scale much faster just because that little kid inside of them isn't upset. And so I know it sounds woo woo and I know it sounds like it's a little out there. I can tell you for a fact. I mean, I've worked, you know the people I work with, right? These
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
taller
I
dudes and
mean,
women, right?
so for me, it's like if you can't do it exactly like, I mean, tell me what you think about this, Annie, because I'm just shooting from the hip here. But for me, it's understanding. Like I can't even remember that, except for that the kid had a full head of hair and it was gorgeous,
Well,
blonde.
see that picture.
Yeah,
That'd be
gorgeous blonde hair. It's It was fantastic, by the way. Fantastic. Other than that, I don't really remember any of that, but I think some of the things that we did helped me understand at least enough of the problems that I had from whatever. I don't know that I can actually figure that out, but that I could fix them. Right? It was around this emotional piece. And I think people, especially one of the things that I talked to Annie about was, people who've been in the military, people who have learned, and I never even saw any action, but people who have learned how to completely isolate their feelings and
or
emotions. And what now?
or repress their emotions, right?
Yeah, there you go. Repress. There's places where that can really be beneficial.
Well, in
i.e.
certain environments, correct.
military. I mean, you
You
don't have
can't have
time for
all
that.
the emotions and try to take out a terrorist. That's
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
mean, is that those two are antagonistic to one another. Um, but learning how to actually take the pieces of
Yeah,
that are really really good, that are like a superpower, and then isolate them from the other part that is really harming the rest of whatever else you're trying to accomplish, and use the the cool parts of that, and then figure out how to solve for this other part over here where you actually do have to feel something, and you do have to use those emotions, and that does catapult you. It actually does.
and I'm not saying the inner child is the only way to get there, right? Because what you and I did was much more logical, tactical. Like, okay, what's the pattern? How do we make sure that that pattern doesn't own you? How do we interrupt that pattern consistently? How do we make sure you don't stay in that negative side for longer than 15 to 20 minutes? Because some
Yeah,
people
like
can stay in
how do I
patterns
use
for
it? How do I use it for what its purpose is, and then how do I put it away when I don't need it? Like,
exactly.
I don't need to be there 24/7 anymore. Like, it's just not
No, you don't.
necessary.
No, but the main thing that I've seen though is if you don't address those emotions that are repressed, whether you're, I mean, I've worked with a lot of the Navy SEALs too, right? So what I find really interesting is once these SEALs come out, they haven't been able to process emotions for years. And so once you work with them on processing the emotions, they all become super, I think, superhuman, right? And so if you think about all the work that Joe Dispenza does and a lot of these other really incredible people do to help you process and work through emotional states, I think for most men, the missing 10% of them stepping into their power comes from identifying whatever that pattern is and then allowing you to weave that pattern into your superpower so you can take on more from a place that's easier and more effortless. So that's
Yeah,
what I've been observing.
and personally, from my perspective, also it helps everybody around you. It helps your
Oh, yes.
team, right? They don't have to guess. They know what's going on, right? And so for me, that was a game changer. Show a little bit more, and be human. I think the whole superhuman piece, everybody combines the two
Be human.
words.
Just be human.
Yeah,
Right.
just like be super and human. And then sometimes you can put them together and be superhuman. That's okay. If it's something you can do, there's not very many people who can do that anyway. So just own it, but
Yep.
then be able to bifurcate those, be human and be super, and then be the third thing, which is superhuman.
Yeah, and you're never going to lose your edge. That's one of the things most of the men and women that I work with will say. They're like, "Well, if I change and I start weaving in some of this emotion, and am I going to lose my edge? Am I going to not be able to work as much or do as much in the world?" And the cool thing about it is, no, you still have your edge. You've built that as a skill set for the last 30, 40 years of your life. That edge isn't going anywhere. You might have a different fuel that fuels you moving forward, which is actually needed to get through that ceiling that you've created. So I think the other thing I would say, Ron, is what most entrepreneurs and CEOs that I work with sometimes aren't aware of is they think things are common sense that are not. They're actually their own genius. So when I work with a team and I identify that they're not getting enough information from that CEO or that entrepreneur or that leader, it's almost always because what they think is common sense that they think everyone should have is actually their genius that they need to train their team more on. So that's
Yeah.
something really
And
unique.
or they feel like everybody ought to be able to do it, and not everybody can do it,
Not
which is
everyone.
part of the reason why everybody has something unique about them. And I have found the same thing sitting in masterminds and just listening to people talk down about the people working on their team because they can't do the thing that they're doing. And I'm like, you do realize that, like, almost nobody can do that thing you're talking about, and you expect everybody on your team to be able to do it. It's literally why you started this is why it's working as well as it is. And if you find somebody else who can do this thing really, really well, like you can, it's not unique anymore.
True.
So all of the things that you don't do uniquely well, go find those people to bring them on the team. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's mind numbing to me. And it's and I say this as a guy who's sat in the same groups and have people look at me cross-eyed like, what are you saying, Ron? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you can just easily see it in other people and you can't see it in yourself. Whatever it is, it's always easier to see it in other people. Okay, well, that's really, really solid. So figure out what the old you needed, the younger you needs, and then supply it somehow.
Correct.
And then what was the second thing again?
So figure out what your younger self needs and make sure you're the one giving it to that younger self every day. So
Okay.
don't look for it internally, right? So that's the
Yeah,
first piece. Second piece is anything that you think is common sense is not for everybody else. That's part of your genius. So start identifying your genius so you can work in that all the time and start training the common sense in your team. The third piece I would say, and this is something that helps with the saboteur side, I wanted everybody that I worked with to create something called a reality document. Because when you're in that negative funk or you get stuck in that negative space, your brain loops. And so I wanted a reality document from everybody that listed all the things that you have in your life that are amazing, the money that's in the bank, all the cash that you got, and all the relationships you have that could take you to the next level. Because when you get down into that funk, you got to go to that document and remind yourself of who you are so that the negative loop of the subconscious from when you were a kid doesn't take over. So it's a very practical application of this. And then I also think, most of us have to look at redefining success and realizing that the way we would have defined success when we were young is very different than the way we might define success today. But most people go through their whole life just focusing on an objective or a target or a number. But success has to be redefined every couple of years. Otherwise, you get trapped again in the old stories of the subconscious.
Yeah, that is. Otherwise, you can't expand.
You can't.
And I believe we're put here to learn and expand and grow as much as we possibly can.
Me too.
And that's in every aspect of our lives. I think a lot of people, this show is primarily about, making money and doing business well.
We got a human.
One of the things that I think entrepreneurs just forget a lot is that making money is not the only thing we're supposed to be expanding at. There's a whole host of other things that we're supposed to be doing better every day. And to exclude them and only focus on money or business is a fool's errand. It will never, ever make any of us happy.
No.
Or bring us joy.
True. Really, it's connection, I think, that does all of those things. We just sometimes forget how important connection is in the business realm.
Yeah. And sometimes we only get our connection from business.
Correct.
I know a lot of people who get all of their connection from there, and then they blow up their families, blow up their personal relationships, blow up their spiritual life, everything, because they're getting fed everything that they quote unquote need from their business.
And that usually is linked back to the childhood stuff that I'm talking about.
There we go. And that's a big saboteur, man. Why?
Huge.
Like, man. And it's all, again, I keep harping on this, but it's always so easy to see from the outside. Like, everybody else can see that everything's melting down.
Right.
And for whatever reason, that person never even notices until, their spouse just up and leaves. And they show up one day and they're gone. Like, they're just gone. What happened? Well, anybody could see what was happening. It is usually a dude. Like, everybody could see what was happening. Not surprised you couldn't.
There's I read this great book once called Getting the Love That You Want. And if anyone's having any suffering in their relationship, that book is very helpful because it helps you identify where are we trying to create exits from each other. And one of the biggest exits that men create who are entrepreneurs in business is they go to the business to receive value and validation rather than finding it internally with that kid inside of themselves or with their family.
So spot on. I hope I know for a fact one of you or multiple of you listening, that is happening. I to somebody who's listening, I know it is just because of the numbers. If it is, hear what Annie just said. I don't think you could put it any more succinct. I was going to recap it, and I don't think I can. It was so succinct. Don't do that. Don't escape to your business because there's a problem in your relationship. That is the easy way out, and we don't do the easy way out. That's avoiding the tough work of solving an actual problem.
And Ron, one thing I can say to anybody listening who might have that issue going on where the relationship side is a little bit on the rocks and the business is, you want to scale and grow the business, but you feel like you almost can't because you've got the situation going on at home. Think of everything going on at home as the crucible for you to learn how to take your business to the next level. So if you put that effort into the relationship and you learn how to manage it, it's probably different emotional learning and emotional intelligence learning and conversation learning and communication learning that you haven't optimized, which is why your business is stuck where it's at. So I've done this for a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with that end up having some issues going on at home. I'm like, well, let's make you the best communicator. Let's make you the best connector. Let's make you the best at support in your home environment, because if you do that there, you will do it exponentially well in business. And so the crucible is the home environment.
I can't agree more. I was on a podcast years ago. I can't remember what podcast it was, but they asked me what my superpower was. And at the time, I said, Bobby Joe's my superpower. Like, she is my superpower. What Annie just said is the direction. It's the recipe to make your home life the superpower for your business.
Correct.
And I think there's a lot of, especially men, probably women too, but especially men, that's where I see it, where they have this, I built it, I did it. And they're the same cadre of people who tout the self-made man, like, I'm a self-made man. Well, no, you're not. Like, you had a whole team. You didn't do this by yourself. You had a whole bunch of people around you. You had mentors and coaches, and then everybody forgets
the supportive spouse.
Yes, like, you did not do this alone, and they discount because in the early stages of business, probably things were going well at home too, and we forget that because, what'd you call it? The crucible? That's the crucible. Because this was going well, your business also was able to go well. And when this goes south, a lot of times we don't have enough time to go through it, but there's stages to this thing, and everything gets destroyed. And it's because you forgot what actually made everything work to begin with. It's the support, all of the love, all of the support, all of the work that goes into buoying up a crazy entrepreneur with a little bit of psychosis. I mean, it's not as easy to live with an entrepreneur, A-type personality, crazy person as we think it is. It's not. True. And if you have somebody who is willing to put up with your psychosis and help you grow a business, let's not forget, once the business is going well, who was there. Let's just not do that. It's a bad move. I
also have to say about that, the thing that's so interesting for me is when you watch people say they're making a lot of money and they think that, well, I'm making so much money that it doesn't matter what's happening at home. But if you think about your personal development and you think about your spouse's personal development, if you're both trying to develop at the same level, it's so helpful because then you grow together. And we honestly have to evolve the relationship every 5 to 7 years in order for that connection to be maintained. And so many people put the relationship on the back burner because, like, oh, I'll eventually work on this once I make this amount of money, or this amount of money will help me make this relationship better. But the reality is, if you forgo investing into that bank account of the relationship, it will spin out and you might make a set amount of money, but that will still be capped every time because you haven't done the work personally.
Yeah, and you have to start all over again.
You do.
It's like starting your business all over again. Do you really want to do that? It is one of the dumbest moves in business that you can make. And Annie, I almost swore again. I've been trying to keep it down. there are people out there who teach this. Like, if they don't get on board with what you're doing, kick them to the curb and go get a new one that will. They teach this stuff because they're an anchor holding them back. I hope everybody heard. The truth is, done well, they're not an anchor. They're the engine on the back of your boat. What's the song? The wind in my sails? No, beneath my wings. See, it didn't work. I was trying to go for a sailboat there to land the boat analogy, but it didn't work. The engines, they're the engines on your boat. So,
and the other piece around that I want to say for anyone listening, because this is really important for men and women to remember. If you're the entrepreneur, then the person that is at home with you, it's important that they actually are lower ambition than you. Because if they are lower ambition than you, they're higher support. And that's actually what you need. So we can't look at our spouses who are not as ambitious as we are, or who are not driving as hard as we are, or maybe aren't as self-developed as we are, quote unquote, because I've heard this a lot. We have to look at them and be like, they have a higher support quotient and they have less ambition so that our ambition can lead the charge. So it's important to realize that we don't need to have two high ambitious people in a relationship necessarily to make it really incredible. You can have one person that's the lower ambition, higher support person.
Yep. Man, that was good. I think we should end on this, Annie.
Perfect.
But where can people locate you? Like, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get in contact with you and chat with you more?
If anybody wants to get in contact, you can find me on Instagram, NorthstarLeadership.Annie. That's the easiest way because you can just DM me. A lot of people do when they hear me on a podcast. I also, Ron, have a really cool PDF that I can send to you if you're open to it, called The 7 Phrases to Lead at Home and to Lead in the Boardroom. Because these phrases use massive conflict, whether it's at home or in business. And the more you use them, the better your relationship and your business goes.
I love it. Well, every week I end the show, Annie, and I say, no, get out there, make something happen. And this week, the something ought to be unsticking yourself. So that's really what we ought to be doing. And whether that's at home or whether that's in business or whatever it is, that's the something you should be making happen this week. Annie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I loved every moment. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Till next week, everybody, get out there and make something happen.
This has been the Get Real Podcast. To subscribe and for more information, including a list of all episodes, go to getrealestatesuccess.com.